Hey guys, how you doing? Ron Raymond here from the Raymond Report with your CFL show for week number 8 of the Canadian Football League. Hope you're having yourself a good start to your day. As always, don't forget, subscribe to our channel by tapping that notification bell in the top right-hand corner or hit the subscribe button below this video if you're using a mobile device. Today's podcast is brought to you by ATSstats.com. Come and get the free CFL reports each and every day by going to the website ATSstats.com. Once you get to the site, go to CFL. Hit it on the pull-down menu and go get all the stats and the picks and previews right here at ATSstats.com. All right, we got some good matchups this week in the Canadian Football League. On Thursday night, you got Saskatchewan taking on Montreal. Montreal's a 3-point favorite. Over/under is at 48.5. And then Friday night football here in the nation's capital, you got the Calgary Stampeders, a 1-point road favorite. Got to wonder about that line. 51.5 is the total. Winnipeg playing Toronto. They're going there as a road underdog. Toronto, a 1-point favorite. And then you got Hamilton traveling to Commonwealth Stadium in Edmonton as a 2.5-point favorite. 53 is the total, and that will be your Sunday night game of the week in Edmonton. All right, let's get to the show here for the Canadian Football League. Before we get to the matchups, let's take a look at our strength of schedule power ratings. And the BC Lions right now have a power rating of 56. You can see Calgary's at 50. Edmonton's at 35. Hamilton at 42. Montreal is the number one power rated team here in the Raymond Report at 62%. Ottawa's at 46, and even though they're 4-2, their strength of schedule has been very weak. In fact, the strength of schedule is at 26%, so that's the record of the opponents they face. Saskatchewan's at 57. Toronto, one of the toughest strength of schedule, 56.3. They're at 53% on the power rating. And you got Winnipeg, who's had the hardest strength of schedule along with Edmonton. Edmonton's been tough, 70.2%. But Winnipeg right there at 67.3%. They come in at 48 on the power rating. Now, one thing you want to do when you're grading the power rating using the Raymond Report right here at ATSstats.com is take a look at the power rating in the last 3 games to see if a team is on the decline or incline the way they're playing, right? The performance, either they're getting better or they're getting worse. So BC pretty much even, 56 and 56. Calgary 50 and 50, same thing. Edmonton 35 and 33. Believe it or not, they're getting worse. How can you get worse than 0 and 6? But anyways, they have Hamilton 42. Now they won last week, so it bumps up their power rating to 44. Montreal, big injury in Montreal. I'll talk about that in just a few minutes with Cody Fajardo. They went from 62 to 50 on the 3-game power rating, but they're still up there at 62, number 1 in the league. They're going to be tested this week against the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Ottawa's at 46, but the last 3, though, at 44. And that's because of the strength of schedule. Strength of schedule for Ottawa, they're beating the beatables, but they'll be in tough this week against Calgary. Saskatchewan, they got a 61 power rating in the last 3 games. They're at 57. Saskatchewan's probably, to me, the biggest surprise this year in the Canadian Football League. Corey May's doing a really good job out there in the prairies. And then Toronto, 53. They're at 44 the last 3 games. Toronto could get a little bit better. They started, you know what? They're pretty good. They're a pretty good football team. Just got to settle their quarterback situation. We don't know this week if it's going to be Cameron Dukes or Nick Arbuckle. And then Winnipeg, 48, and then you got 61 on the power rating in the last 3 games. I think Winnipeg is, they're going to get a little bit better here, so watch out for Winnipeg in week number 8. All right, that is your strength of schedule power rating. Now, if you look at last week in the Canadian Football League, the favorites, let me see how they did. Okay, the favorites only won 1 game. They went 1-3. And same thing against the point spread. So the underdogs in the Canadian Football League, man, they've been tearing it up. I'll give you the record on the season in just a few minutes. And every game in the Canadian Football League for week number 7 went under the total. And the bookmakers on the year doing a good job balancing the numbers. 50 and 50 when it comes to the Canadian Football League over-unders. So it's just, you look at the last 3 weeks, right? You got week number 5, 3 games went over, 1 went under. Then last week 6, all 4 games went over, and then last week all 4 games went under. So it's like flipping a quarter, trying to pick the total here in the Canadian Football League. Now, when you look at the overall picture in the Canadian Football League, you can see underdogs have covered the spread 71.4% of the time. And when is the best time to play those underdogs? Well, according to our stats right now, it's when they're home underdogs. Home underdogs are 10-2 against the number in the Canadian Football League, and road underdogs are 10-6. But home dogs is where you want to lean when you're picking the underdog rolls, right? And also, anytime you get an underdog of plus 3.5 to 6.5, look at this record: 9-7 straight up, but 13-3 against the number. So any underdog, either home or away, that are 3.5 to 6.5 point spread. 13-3. That's good for 81.2%. So the dogs are barking in the Canadian Football League so far through the first 7 weeks. All right. Take a look at the scoring average for the Canadian Football League. The number one offense, a little surprised when I saw this, the Toronto Argonauts, averaging 29.6 points per game. BC coming in second at 29.4. Montreal at 29.1 for third. And then you got Saskatchewan at number 4, averaging 27.8 points per game. You got Calgary at 26 in fifth spot. Hamilton, 25 points per game. They're in number 6. Edmonton 7 with 24.3. Ottawa, even though they're 4-2, look at their points. Ottawa's, to me, it's special teams and defense getting it all done. And I live here in Ottawa, so I go to every game, so I kind of know what this team's all about. Once they get their offense more consistent, they could be a dominant force in the Eastern Conference. Now, looking at Winnipeg, this is unbelievable. Winnipeg ranked 9th with Zach Collaros in scoring this year, 21.2 points per game, and that is the league worst. That we're not, probably the fans in Winnipeg are not used to that. Now, when it comes to defense, Montreal is ranked number 1, only giving up 22.6 points per game. Saskatchewan's right there with 23 points against. They're in second place. BC, 24.1. Winnipeg, 24.2. Good enough for fourth place. Ottawa Redblacks, giving up 26.8 points per game. That's good for fifth. Then you got Calgary in 6th at 27.3. Toronto in 7th at 28 points per game, so 4 touchdowns a game. Edmonton in the 8th position, giving up 28.6 points per game. And the Hamilton Tiger Cats, the league worst in defense, giving up 32.17 points per game. Now, one feature we do have here at the website that you can use if you want to see which ranking is facing who. Like, for example, you got Saskatchewan taking on Montreal, so you got the 4th best offense against the 3rd best offense in Montreal. And then you got the number 1 and 2 defense going at it at the Molson Percival Stadium in Montreal on Thursday Night Football. So that's one of the tools you can use here if you are a analytics handicapper or player, and you can figure that out on your own by just coming to the website. All right, which team is the best team against the point spread in the Canadian Football League? Well, it's the Calgary Stampeders and the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Both these teams are 5-1 straight up. And if you're looking for a team that plays a lot of overs, Saskatchewan is 5-1 to the over. And the team that plays a lot of unders is Winnipeg at 1-6. All right, let's get to your CFL matchups for week number 1. And let's go to La Belle Province in Montreal, Quebec, where the Montreal Alouettes are going to take on the Saskatchewan Roughriders as a 3.5 point home favorite. Now, the Alouettes got some bad news this week. Cody Fajardo, former Nevada Wolfpack quarterback and a journeyman quarterback in the CFL, is going to be on the IR for about 6 weeks. And last week he pulled, I believe, was his hamstring. And if you ever pulled your hamstring, it takes time to recoup. And the thing is, hamstrings growing, any muscles in lower body is the only thing you can do is rest. You can't train or rehab a pulled muscle. So that's the bad news about that injury for Cody Fajardo. And the bad news is for the Saskatchewan Roughriders, they're going to be without AJ Ouellette, their running back, who's he's like a fullback type running back. And man, he really almost like a Jerome Bettis type fullback when he's in the backfield. It takes probably 2 guys to take him down. Now, all right, so going into this game, you got the number 1 defense up against the number 2 defense, and we just talked about that here and the scoring averages, right? You got Montreal number 1, Saskatchewan number 2 in points against. But going into this game, it's the bookmakers are making Montreal a 3.5 point favorite with Caleb Evans at the helm. And obviously, that's going to be a little bit of a different look with Caleb at the quarterback position. And he's going up against Saskatchewan. Now, Shea Patterson from Michigan has been okay. He's done all right as the quarterback for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. And taking a look at Patterson's number on the season, he's thrown so far for 772 yards. And let me see here. His pass completion, 53 for 83. Percentage-wise, 63.9, averaging 9.3 yards per pass per yards per average, and average is 14.6. So going into this game, the quarterback position, to me, it does favor a little bit, I would say, Montreal. Caleb Evans has a little bit more experience in the CFL, and both these teams have really good defenses. And when you look at the Saskatchewan Roughriders, when they traveled to Montreal in the last 10 games, 4-6 straight up and against the number. They're playing on 5 days rest, so that's the bad news for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. They're coming in on 5 days rest. They played on July 19th. Now, July 19th was last Friday on Friday Night Football against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. That was a 19-9 win for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. It looks like Saskatchewan, when you look at all their 6 games this year, the only one game that they weren't involved in was the BC game, where they were a 7-point road underdog. 35-20 was the final. And but every other game, Saskatchewan 29-21 against Edmonton, 33-30 against the Tiger Cats, 36-20 against the Tigers. So that was back-to-back games in Hamilton and then in Saskatchewan at Mosaic. And then you had the Rough Riders against the Argonauts. That was a 30-23. The BC game, they lost by 15. And then Winnipeg, they beat Winnipeg at home 19-9. So on the road this season, you can see that Saskatchewan 2-1 straight up and against the number. But the teams they played on the road is Edmonton, Hamilton, and BC. So they lost to the team that has a winning record. Where Montreal at home this year. They beat Ottawa 47-21. They played Saskatchewan, where they had to come from behind to win this one 30-26. And I see I don't see a lot of value laying the points here in Montreal. I think if you're going to touch this game, I don't think you touch the side. I think you want to go with the total. And I do have a nice system here on the under in the game between Saskatchewan and Montreal. And the over-under in this game is what, 48.5? 48.5. And here's the system I have here on the CFL. Anytime you got a CFL road underdog playing on the Thursday night, and they're on 5 days rest, and it's during week 4 to 8, and they're coming off 17 or more points on offense, 1-11 to the under. So if they're coming off a game where they scored 17 or more points, 1-11 to the under. So I'm going to play this game under the total. If you're going to play the side, I would play Saskatchewan. It's just, Saskatchewan's just having one of those years. It's just, they're getting I wouldn't say the lucky bounces, but it's just everything's going their way, it seems, when they're playing. They're 4-1 in their last 5 games. I think going into this one, you either take the under, or if you're going to play a side, I think you take the plus the points, and you go with a team that's 5-1. In fact, it's a battle of 2 5-1 teams. And Montreal, we know they're a very well-coached team under Jason Moss. But I'm going to go with the under 48.5 in the game between Saskatchewan and Montreal. All right, let's go to your next game. Let's go to the game that's going to be involved here in Ottawa between the Calgary Stampeders and the Ottawa Redblacks. Now, Calgary did play on the Sunday night game. There were a lot of injuries in that game, and they came out. They won. They beat BC Lions 25-24 in that game, and Vernon Adams Jr. Having one heck of a season. But now they're on the road, and they're completely Jekyll and Hyde type team. And what I mean by that is when Calgary, you play them at home, they're a tough team to beat at home. 3-0, but when they're on the road, they tend to hide. They're 0-3 on the road this season. But you take a look at the teams they played on the road. They played BC, which is one of the top teams. They lost 26-17. They played Montreal, one of the other top teams that's 5-1. They won 30-26, and they had the lead in that game, right? And then Winnipeg. Winnipeg's been one of the best teams in the CFL the last 5 years, and that was also a close one, 41-37. So Calgary coming in, battle tested. They faced some really good teams. Ottawa Redblacks, they're getting away with murder in some of these games. They played Winnipeg in the rain delay first game of the year. They probably should have lost that game, had the momentum. Winnipeg had that momentum at the beginning of the fourth quarter or late in the fourth quarter. Then the rainstorm happened and they hung on to win. Montreal, they took a spanking there, 47-21. And then you got the game against Hamilton. They won by 2. And then Winnipeg, 25-16, they lost. And then they played Edmonton in back-to-back situations. They won 37-34 and 20-14. So you can see Ottawa, not a very dominant team here. But the one thing I will say about this Ottawa teams, once they get this offense figured out and they start rolling in a more consistent basis, they're going to be a pretty good football team. Now, Jake Maier is the quarterback here of the Calgary Stampeders, and Jake's been having a really good run. In fact, he's having an MOP-type season at the beginning of the year. Jake Maier, the quarterback for the Calgary Stampeders, he's already thrown for 1,559 yards. He's averaging 259.8 passing yards per game. But the bad news is they're pretty banged up here. The Calgary Stampeders, they just played last Sunday. You're getting an Ottawa team that's playing a lot better. And Drew Brown, the quarterback for the Ottawa Redblacks, has been, he got knocked out that one game against Edmonton, came back last week and did a good job. I know my forecast here has Calgary winning 28-24, And when I look at the history between these teams, Calgary does very well in this building. They're 7-3 against the number. Ottawa's only 2-8 against the Calgary Stampeders at home. But you know what? Sometimes you got to take a flyer. And even though all the analytics are pointing to Calgary, I kind of like this Ottawa Red Blacks team. I think Ottawa going in, facing a team that's on a short week. They've only had 4 days rest. They're pretty banged up. And when I look at some of the stats and trends going into this game, I'm going to go to my Raymond Report here. And let's take a look at the Ottawa Red Blacks. And let me see what I got here. When the Ottawa, that's nothing really to write home about. Yeah, Calgary, I got some good number. If you like Calgary, anytime they're a road favorite during week 4 to 8, coming off a 1-game under, 10-3 against the number. But you know what? I'm going to go with the Ottawa Red Blacks this Friday night. And I think, it's a 1 point, line. So it's not as if they're going to be a big underdog, right? But I'm going with Ottawa. I'm going to take the Ottawa Red Blacks. And it's not a homer call, because trust me, anybody who knows me and watches my show on this game, I just feel Ottawa is, and they love their head coach. They love to play for Bob Dice, head coach Bob Dice. And I just think Calgary is in a bad spot. They played last Sunday, and Ottawa with a good walk-up crowd here on Friday night. The weather's supposed to be good. I think Ottawa gets the win here, and we'll see if we can go 2 for 2 with Ottawa and Saskatchewan, or the under in the first game. All right, so I'm going to go with the Ottawa Red Blacks here to beat Calgary and see if they can go to 5-2. It'll be a while since they've been to, can't even remember last time they went 5-2, but we'll see if it happens. All right, here's the other good game of the week. You got the Winnipeg Blue Bombers taking on the Toronto Argonauts. Now, a little bit of quarterback controversy in Argoland. Nobody knows who's going to start this game. You got Cameron Dukes, who got pulled last week for Nick Arbuckle. And, the thing is, when a quarterback gets pulled, they always say it all the time, right? The most popular player in the stadium is the backup quarterback when the team is losing. It's so easy for quarterbacks to come in and you got nothing to lose, right? They say if you're coming in and you're losing the game, and if you make a mount a comeback, you're the hero, right? And if you lose and you get blown out, well, you didn't start the game, so they're not going to blame you. Anyways, we'll see who's going to start that game. I know Ryan Dinwiddie's going to have Coach Dinwiddie's going to have a decision to make right there. And this game is just like the Ottawa-Calgary game. You got a 1-point favorite for Toronto. The over-under is at 49.5. The computer forecast here likes the Toronto Argonauts at 25-22. The over-under at 47.6. I'm not going to agree with that. I think Winnipeg, coming into this game, they've had a tough schedule. When you look at their schedule, it's one of the toughest strength of schedule in the Canadian Football League, 67.3%. And look at the opponents they faced. They faced Montreal, winning record. Ottawa, winning record. BC, winning record. Calgary, winning record. Ottawa, Calgary, and Saskatchewan. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers have not faced a team with a losing record yet. And when you look at Toronto, Hamilton, Montreal, Saskatchewan, same thing. Edmonton, that's the only breather they had was against the Edmonton Elks. But this team for Winnipeg, to me, they were the number one team favorite to win the Grey Cup this year, and they got out of the gates pretty slow. But when you look at their games, they're in every game. 19-9, 41-37 win, a 25-16 win. They lose by 3 to Calgary. They lose by 2 to BC. They lose by 4 to Ottawa. And then in the home opener, that's the only game that probably they didn't, were never in it. I'm going to go with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. I think the Bombers on the road playing a little bit better. You're getting Zach Collaros, the starting quarterback for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. He's, no Brady Oliveira, though, this week. It looks like he's going to be questionable. But I'm good enough to take Winnipeg in this one here. And Mike O'Shea, the former Toronto Argonaut back in the day. And I think he was also a special teams coordinator with the Argonauts early on in his career. And let me see if I got any stats and trends to share with you guys on this game with Winnipeg. And let me go to Winnipeg against Toronto. And let's see what we have here. Winnipeg Blue Bombers. The under is 10-2 for the Bombers as a road team coming off an under. And if you like the over in this game, I got a system on the over. Anytime you got a home favorite like Toronto on 6 days rest during week 4 to 8, and they're coming off a game that went under, the over is 11-1 in the next game. And the other system is this. Anytime you got a home favorite during week 4 to 8 in the Canadian Football League, and that team's playing on a Saturday on 6 days rest, and they allowed 27 or more points against in their last game, 13-2 to the over. So Winnipeg and over seems like a good bet, but I'm going to take Winnipeg plus the point, and let's see if Winnipeg can go in Toronto and get the W. All right, and your final game of the week, it's this is Not to, hey, it's not going to be a ratings bonanza, but you never know. You never know. You got two really good quarterbacks here. You got Bo Levi Mitchell, McLeod Bethel Thompson for the Edmonton Elks. So quarterback play, probably some of the most veteran quarterbacks in the leagues going at it this week. When you look at all the quarterbacks, you got Cody Fajardo and Caleb Evans in Montreal. You got Cameron Dukes and Nick Arbuckle. Caleros, he's a veteran. McLeod Bethel Thompson, he was in the CFL before, went to the USFL, came back. Vernon Adams Jr., he's coming into his own right now, and he's in year 3 or 4 of his career, maybe year 5. Drew Brown's a rookie, sort of. Shea Patterson, Jake Mayer, and Bo Levi Mitchell. He's the senior veteran now in the Canadian Football League. But going into this game, I'm going to be leaning towards the Hamilton Tiger Cats. They got a nice win last week, and Toronto nearly mounted the comeback. But going into this one, Edmonton's a 2.5-point home favorite. 53 is the total. And the Hamilton Tiger Cats, when they go to Ivor Stadium in their last 10 trips, they are 9-1 against the number. And when I look at this Hamilton team, they got some weapons. They got James Butler as the running back, Shamar Bridges, Stephen Dunbar. So there's some weapons here. Tim White, they just got to find Tim White a little bit more here on offense. But Edmonton, they got McLeod Bethel Thompson. They haven't won a game all year. They're still 0-6 on the season. They fired their head coach last week. Both these teams coming in on fairly amount of decent rest. Hamilton will be on 7 days rest, while Edmonton will be on 8 days rest. And when I look at the stats and trends going into this one, the Hamilton Tiger Cats as a road team coming off a one-game win streak, 13-4 against the number. I'm going to go with Hamilton this week in Edmonton. And let's take that +3. Hey, it's been a dog season so far. Let's see if the dogs can keep barking. And let's go with Hamilton +2.5. And I'm going to take probably the more senior quarterback, McLeod Bethel Thompson. He's been around. I think he's won a Grey Cup too. And I believe he did. I can't remember. I'll have to double check on that. But I'm going to go Hamilton. All right, so here's my picks. To recap, I'm going to go Saskatchewan +3 as a strong opinion, but I like the under better in that game. I like Ottawa +1. I like Winnipeg +1, and I like Hamilton +2.5. So as you can see, the dogs are going to be barking hopefully for us this week in the Canadian Football League, week number 8. And let's see if we can keep the dog theme going. All right, folks, don't forget, you can get the Raymond Report if you want my top play, my best bet, each and every day. You can get them right here at the website, atsstats.com. Go to free picks. And then once you get to the free pick page, you'll see Ron Raymond's today's pick. Click on it. And then my top play, my 5-star CFL best bet of the week will be listed right here at atsstats.com. All right, enjoy CFL week number 8. I'll be back next week with some more Canadian Football League talk.